Second, examples of tombs that deviated from the general architectural style. In this section, we will study a few tombs that did not follow the New Kingdom nobles' general architectural model. This anomaly usually concentrated on a single architectural element rather than all of them. Tomb Chapel of Ramose, number 55. The Tomb of Ramose, number 55, in Sheikh Abd al-Qurna Cemetery serves as an example of this. During the reigns of both Amenhotep III and Akhenaten, he served as both the provincial governor or district governor of Thebes and a minister. His tomb is regarded as one of the biggest tombs in Thebes, carved out of the mountainside on the west bank. The tomb most likely dates to the late reign of King Amenhotep III and the early years of King Akhenaten's reign, up to the 5th year. It appears that this tomb was never used and that incomplete structure was done on it. Given that there existed a tomb bearing the same name in Tel El Amarna, it seems probable that Ramose left Thebes and traveled there to live with Akhenaten. The tombs of the nobility during King Amenhotep III's reign are a superb example of the magnificence of ancient Egyptian art because, as we know, New Kingdom art flourished during his reign. In fact, his reign is regarded as one of the most brilliant periods of ancient Egyptian art in general, whether the art of sculpture or engraving. Sadly, the most beautiful decorations of the tomb were destroyed by vandalism, most likely during the reign of King Horemheb, who waged a campaign of revenge against the god Aten and his followers. The tomb is unique since it united two totally different eras for two kings with different artistic style and doctrine. Its walls display the height of artistic achievement during Amenhotep III's reign in terms of elegance, style, taste, color selection, and fine engraving. Additionally, we can see the new artistic movement that emerged during Akhenaten's reign on its walls. In honor of the god Aten, we can refer to it as Atenism. The earliest texts related to the doctrine of the Aten were found within its walls, where Amenhotep IV, later Akhenaten, instructs Ramose, saying, "The words of Re I deliver to you, the words of my father who taught me," to which Ramose replies, "Your monuments will last as long as the heavens remain, and they will last as long as Aten exists in them." The method used by the ancient Egyptian engineer to carve, sketch, engrave, and paint such chapels was demonstrated in the chapel of this tomb. This indicates that the engineer was breaking up the chapel's work into phases, with the sculptors starting with excavating and preparing the exterior courtyard, then polishing the facade, and last carving and polishing the walls of the transverse hall. When the sculptors start working in the long hall, the artists start creating scenes for one of the transverse hall's walls. Once the scene is completed, the engravers engrave it and, if time permits, and color it. This is demonstrated by the fact that some of the transverse hall's walls, like the eastern wall or the entrance wall, have already been completed, while others have started work on them. It is also important to mention that the transverse hall's walls, facade, entrance, and outer courtyard of the tomb chapel are all finished. The fact that the scenes have been drawn in red ink with some corrections made solely in black ink, indicating that the scenes are being prepared for drawing, engraving, and coloring, further indicates that the artists have completed the majority of the transverse hall's walls while they have started work on the wall facing the entrance. Not every wall in the long hall was polished. It is also mentioned that Ramose favored painting funeral procession images on the left wall of the transverse hall, maybe due to the unfinished long hall, though the explanation for this is unknown. The design of the tomb is the same as the previous model we studied, but it stands out due to its large size and the 4 rows of columns that support the transverse hall ceiling. Each row has 8 columns with capitals shaped like budded papyrus flowers. While some have been restored and rebuilt by the University of Liverpool, the majority are in ruins. The long hall has 2 rows of columns, each with 4 columns arranged in the shape of a bundle of papyrus, on either side of the tomb's axis. The offering room, at the end of the long hall, is identifiable by its 3 niches, which are probably used to hold statues of the deceased. As I previously mentioned, Ramose may have left Thebes and moved to Tel El Amarna during Akhenaten's reign, or he may have passed away before finishing the work in the tomb, which would explain why the work in this long hall was not finished. The scenes of the transverse hall now start to appear. The deceased are shown making offerings on the left side of the interior, and then a group of senior staff members bearing papyrus bouquets. Next, 4 groups of relatives and guests are shown in front of the deceased. These scenes demonstrate the artistic cleverness of the ancient Egyptians and stand out for their beauty and accuracy of carving. Funeral scenes were painted in vibrant colors on the southern, left, wall, in a manner that seems to be one of the earliest examples of the Atenism painting. The lower register is notable because it features a group of women in mourning between 2 groups of men, the first in front carrying bouquets of papyrus and the second in the back carrying funerary furniture. The upper half features a coffin inside its canopy on top of a boat pulled by a sledge, and the smaller sledge in front of it is what is known as tekenu, which is a black animal skin that most likely contained embalming material. Finally, we witness the deceased and his wife worshipping the god Osiris on the same westernmost wall, right. A sloping corridor close to the southwest corner leads us to the burial room. On the western wall, there are a few scenes that are unfinished. They show the deceased standing in front of King Amenhotep IV sitting inside canopy. The goddess Mot, the goddess of truth, is seated behind him, and the names of the peoples of the 9 bows are displayed beneath the throne. Take note of the artist's usage of a red grid and black outlined figures at the very end. The other half of the transverse hall is now visible. To the right of the interior part, we can see the deceased, his wife, and the bearers of the offerings. Next, we can see a scene where 3 girls are carrying chains in front of the deceased and his wife. At the bottom is a scene where the priests are purifying the deceased statue, and at the end of the wall, left, is a scene that depicts a group of priests. In front of the deceased, his wife, his brother Amenhotep, his wife, and priests carry offerings and fats in 2 rows. Then we go to the scenes painted on the western wall, the inner wall of the hall. Starting from the right, we see the deceased accepting papyrus bouquets, after which he receives a group of senior statesmen and some foreign delegations, including Nubian, Asian, and Libyan delegations. Next, we see the well-known scene of King Amenhotep IV and his wife Nefertiti inside the so-called appearance window, as the king is bestowing medals on the deceased. This image was recorded in the Athenian style that later developed and flourished in Amarna. Then there is a group of men and women who probably come to pay their respects to the deceased. These scenes are merely red ink sketches with some black ink corrections. We then reach the long hall, which is destroyed and the work on it has not been finished. It is incomplete, whether in terms of cutting off its corners or shaping its walls.